Hello and welcome back to This Fanimation. I'm your host, Dennis Bithoulkas, and it's time for Doom Patrol Season 2, Episode 6, Space Patrol. So before I get into it, I'm going to take care of a little bit of business first, and then we'll get to it. So if you like what you see, like, share, and subscribe. If you're still on the fence about subscribing, you're going to see a video at the very end of this video that pops up. Basically, YouTube takes the algorithms of all the stuff you've been watching, tries to match as best as possible one of the videos in my vast video library, and pops it up there just for you. Up here is going to be Is It Worth My Time? Old Guard, the Old Guard. If you want to know when I'm be on live again next, you get the bell down below. It's a 50-50 chance of YouTube actually notifying you. Best thing to do is go to suspendfanimation.com. Take a look at the schedule up there when I remember to change it out once a week. And you can also take a look at all the links to my social media. So that's Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon page. No tier set on the Patreon page. There's also links to this page, the YouTube page, my Facebook page, for those of you who still have Facebook, and there's a Facebook group page where you guys can post stuff and chat amongst yourselves. All right. So, spoiler alert, I'm going to spoil the episode. If you have not seen the episode, go and watch it. Come on back. This will be a video you can comment down below in the comment section. Thank you, Viking Bitch, for the paddle. So, we pretty much leave off directly after, at the end of the last episode, episode 5, when we go straight into episode 6 with, Dorothy having summoned Candlemaker to kill off Baby Doll. And Candlemaker doesn't just kill off Baby Doll, he also kills off Flaming Katie as well. But as we, no one knows this as of yet. And of course, it's Cliff who discovers Jane's body with wax all over her face and calls in Niles because they're looking for Dorothy at this point. And Dorothy's nowhere to be found. And in the meantime, we've got this spaceship landing that Larry sees. I mean, Larry and Rita have just gotten back from the family reunion from hell, and Rita's going to go off and do her audition, well, her play of Our Town, and kind of leaves Larry off on his own. And yes, it is definitely a weird episode, this one, and I love it that they're going weird. So the ship lands, the spaceship lands, and Niles knows who they are, and because he sent them into space, and he says, "Tell him I'm not here," pretty much, and he leaves to go and find Dorothy. And we get an introduction to the pioneers of the Uncharted. Now, the pioneers of the Uncharted consist of Zip, Specs, and Moscow is what her name is. And Moscow happens to have a negative entity within her as well. Um, and yeah, we'll get back into that in a little bit here. So this whole thing of we find out that well, Dorothy leaves behind a note and says that she's leaving, that she didn't mean to do it. She didn't mean what happened to Baby Doll. She didn't want to do that. And she hijacks one of the spaceships and takes off. And basically Cliff gets dragged along because Niles says, "You're going to help me, otherwise I'm not going to help you with a body." Um and just kind of an asshole. And of course he has a spare spaceship sitting in the garage. So he invented the space travel. Of course, Niles did at this point because it was 1955. Sputnik technology. Instead of using space technology, he actually put a little magic into it as well. So there's a goat head in the fucking spaceship, and yeah, just some weird shit. So the pioneers of the Uncharted have been in space since the 50s, 65 years. And, you know, basically, Larry wants to know how in the hell Moscow isn't burned to a crisp like he is with the entity. And she says, "Oh, well, we were, but then we achieved harmony. It took 5 years, but yes, we achieved harmony. And now everything's better now." And she goes, "You mean you haven't achieved harmony with your spirit. And of course, he hasn't at this point. And she's very zen about some of the stuff that's there. And she's actually an original comic character too. She is Negative Woman. So Larry's character is actually called Negative Man in the comics, and she's Negative Woman. Um, it's just because of the negative spirit that comes out and all this stuff. And this character actually has appeared on TV before in the very first season of Legends of Tomorrow. There you go. So this is the second time we've gotten this character, but played by two different actresses, of course. And yeah, that whole thing is tragic too. We find out that Specs and Zip aren't actually alive. They've been they years ago they got inhabited by a spore, and the spore is basically driving them. And that whole thing just was really fucking weird. That her and the entity speculated that once they brought him back to Earth, the spores would not survive, and she basically brought them there to bury them. Is what she did, to have them die and bury them, and it's really fucked up. But at the same time, she's telling Larry that, hey, you need to shed the past in order to move forward. That is one way of looking at things. So this whole episode is about different ways of people dealing with tragedy, and how they move on from that tragedy. Like I said with about this, I've said this before in a lot of these reviews. That's what these episodes do, is they will have a central theme, if you will, and all the characters will experience this. And that's what's going on with this, is how do you deal with tragedy at this point? And for Larry, he's not going to give up on his family. He wants to go back, even though his family sold him out, and he says, I'm going to try and mend my family back together or die trying, is what he says by the end of the episode. Rita, in the meantime, has gone off to go to the play Our Town, which is not the Our Town that we know. It is Our Town with an exclamation point. And it is about what happened last season to the whole town getting sucked into a donkey. And fucking Rita, man, she, of course, does not play the blob lady, as they're calling her. And she actually has a conversation with the actress who is playing the blob lady, and the biography that this woman has created in her head for this character. And it's fairly close to what's going on within Rita. And Rita actually corrects her on a couple of things, like, it wasn't her father's approval that she's looking for, it's her mother's, and things like that. And finally, the woman basically says the real thing that this woman wants to do is basically engulf the world within her body. And I love Rita's, yes, exactly. I love Rita's expression. I found my nemesis. Oh, I mean, that's a nice little lighthearted thing. The other part of this is we have, of course, Cliff and Niles going up into space to go after Dorothy, and Dorothy's sending Candlemaker away. She lands on some planet and is walking around, and basically she tells Candlemaker to go fuck off, and he disappears. We see him walking beside her. We see his hoof prints walking beside her, but he disappears when she tells him to leave. And Cliff finally warming up to Dorothy too at this point, and kind of realizing what a shitty father that he is, and that maybe, you know, he can impart some kind of parental guidance onto Dorothy at this point. And uh yeah, he really kind of steps up in this episode, shall we say. He kind of grows a bit more. And the whole thing where he's talking about his daughter, that, she doesn't really remember her mother because of the accident and all that kind of stuff, but she turned into a really good person, is what he says. And one of the things he tells Dorothy that's really kind of nice is he says, we're all just trying to figure out who we actually are. And that's one of the things that life is about. It's about trying to figure out who you are, and if you're doing the right thing or if you're the bad guy, kind of thing. And that's one of the things that was kind of nice about this episode is him finally working through some shit. So, and yes, I agree with you, Viking bitch. That whole you saw that coming. I mean, I saw it as soon as Niall said, "Hey, can you stow Dorothy's helmet? We're coming in for a landing." And I was like, "Yeah, you're gonna fucking push him out the airlock, you vile son of a bitch." And that's exactly what Niles did, was pushing Cliff out the fucking airlock, telling him that no, we're not going home. What the fuck that means, I have no idea. Because if you see the preview for next week, Cliff is back on Earth. So yeah, there you go. Like I said, there's spoilers involved here. Yes, Niles did do it. Niles is an ass. So one last thing before we get into the whole uh overview of this episode. Crazy Jane. Let's get into what's going on in Jane's head. So the all the personalities have decided to have a funeral for both Baby Doll and Flaming Katie, and they're gonna bring them to the well and dump them in the well. And Jane actually goes to Katie at one point and goes, "What are you seeing what's going on out there? What do you want me to do?" And Katie says, "You're the primary. You make the decisions." And so she comes back and basically tells them, "Hey, I'm not cool with this. We're not dumping them down the well. We don't know if we can die or not, and if they're going to come back or not." And as she's basically standing up to all the personalities, who comes out of the well but Miranda? Or we think it's Miranda at this point. And Miranda says that she's been reborn, and that if they put the bodies into the well, that they will be reborn as well. And I still don't know about this because remember, Katie's father is what lives down in the well. And there's always something evil down in the well. So nothing good comes out of that well. And when they dump the bodies into the well, there's an earthquake kind of thing. And Miranda says those are their stations falling. And yeah, so she basically asked Jane to step aside as primary, and we don't know who has taken the primary position. I don't think it's Miranda. It might actually be Katie at this point that has come back as primary. Um, this will be an interesting to see who's come back and who is taking over as primary now. Um, Again, as we've seen when all the personalities, when each one was trying to take over as primary, they all had their special skill sets, but they could never make all the hard decisions. And that's what Jane was. Jane was the person who made all the hard decisions. And yeah, that was the other thing I thought of too, Viking bitch. What if dear old dad is now the person who's come out as primary? We don't know. We don't know who that is. And there was another interesting thing that was kind of a throwaway in there too, is Jane says that Baby Doll was one of the last personalities that actually trusted men. One of the few, I think she said she one of the two personalities that still trusted men. And that was another thing that was kind of like, oh wow, okay. So where do we go from here with that? You know? So some very, very interesting stuff out of this episode. And Valentina, or Moscow as she was called, of course, is going to go back into space. And Larry essentially says, jumping back over to this part, Larry basically tells the entity, he goes, as long as you're in a human body, we're going to be human. So, yeah. The hair is the same as Miranda. Not really, Sir Cam Lanes. We can't really tell what's going on there. Yeah. Movie Finale says, I wanted Moscow to teach him how to control the entity. You can't. You can't teach him. He needs to find his own balance in that. And he's not going to find balance the same way she did. He's got to go about it his own way. And that was the whole thing, is you need to find your own way in life. That's again what this whole episode is about, is everyone has their own way of coping with tragedy. The town has their own way of coping with tragedy by doing this play. Um, with what happened to them, the Mr. Nobody would happen. Um, Rita, of course, has to deal with her nemesis and this whole thing. Um, Larry has to deal with the entity within him and come to some kind of terms with it in order to achieve the same balance that Moscow has. Uh, and Cliff has come to the realization that he needs to move on from his daughter at this point. And he was ready to embrace Dorothy and basically step up for Dorothy. And Niles didn't learn shit because Niles leaves a whole bunch of mess in his wake. He leaves a whole bunch of half finished projects. And I almost forgot about Cyborg. Cyborg and Ronnie, he actually scans Ronnie to find out if maybe he can help her pain, and finds out that there's a piece of tech left in her that's leaking a chemical into her. And she knows about this already. And that's what's killing her slowly. And it turns out, as he hacks some military files, that her systems were built by Star Labs and Calder Robotics. Yeah, so Niles actually had a hand in building Ronnie as well. So lots of fucked up shit in all of this. And Niles is the center of all of it. He really is. Is he good for anybody? I don't know. I really don't think he is, because he really sets these things up, and he uses people. He uses them as throwaway experimental toys, essentially. And even his own daughter, who he just neglected by leaving her and Danny all that time. And what is it? Almost 100 years, close to 100 years. That's some fucked up shit right there. So Niles at some point is going to have to come to some kind of terms and deal with all the shit that he's done. And I don't think it's going to happen, but he is rapidly becoming the villain, if not already has become the villain of this whole piece. And they are living essentially with their abuser. Yeah, that's what it all comes down to, is you have all these victims living with their abuser in the same house, and he's not helping them at all. So, there's a lot of realization on all this shit right there. Yeah. Yeah. Viking Bitch says, "Oh yeah, Cyborg had a story too. His dad was so happy that he has a girl." Yeah, the whole thing with Silas going, "You buried the lead, son. You got a girl. You fell in love. You got to take it slow, though." Oh man, yeah. Yes, Beard Hunter is back next week as well. Uh so yes, Sir Cam Lanes, welcome back as well. I see you over there. Um, Next week is going to be interesting, since yes, we do get Beard Hunter back. They're back in the white space, and it doesn't look like Mr. Nobody is anywhere to be found, which might be a bad thing. And Cliff is back on Earth. Don't ask me how. He just is. And we'll see what happens next week with all this shit. If Niles is anywhere to be found, anywhere near Doom Manor. So, what do I have coming up for the rest of this week? I'm off tomorrow. Saturday is Saturday morning blast off, where I take the genre news of the week and any other genre stuff you guys want to talk about, and we talk about it. Sunday I'm off as well. Yeah. Monday is Stargirl. Tuesday is another episode of Is It Worth My Time? And I'm still not sure what I'm doing as of yet. I'm probably going to do a throwback, an oldie, something like that. I don't know as of yet. I was at one point watching Space 1999 on Pluto TV, and then they stopped showing it. So that was actually really fun. I hadn't seen that show since I think it aired when I was a kid. Yes, that long ago, back during the Pleistocene era. And of course, what is it? Wednesday I'm off, and then Thursday we come back around again to Doom Patrol. So there we go. Yes, Joker. They were showing Space 1999 on Pluto TV. It was fairly cool. That show actually had a lot going for it, man. It did. Even though it was done in the 70s, it was some pretty cool shit. It was the spiritual successor to Star Trek, I would say. It really was. So some good stuff. All right, everybody. I'm gonna let you guys go for the night. Unless anyone has any questions about anything. I mean, I can try and answer as best as possible, but yeah, good episode this week. Really good episode this week. And again, it brings Niles back to the forefront of being a villain. Um, and I want them to explore this a little bit more because we've kind of forgotten that Niles is a villain, and we've kind of been lulled into complacency about that, and that he still should not be let off the hook for all the shit that he's done. And there's shit that he's forgotten about that he's done that is still coming back, literally falling back out of the sky to land in his backyard, and he still doesn't want to deal with that shit either. So, yeah, we'll see where this all comes about because it all revolves around that motherfucker right there. And Timothy Dalton plays him very, very well. I mean, you like him, but you also hate him. Yes, it's really he does a really good job of it. He really does flip that back and forth fairly easily. Very, very slimy sometimes too. All right. Thank you, everybody. So remember, if you like what you see here, like, share, and subscribe. If you're still on the fence about subscribing at the very end of this video, take a look up here. And if you like what you see there, hit the subscribe button down there. And if you want to know when I'll be on live again next, you get the bell down below. It's a 50-50 chance of YouTube actually notifying you. Go to suspendedfanimation.com. Take a look at the schedule that's up there. And all the links to my social media is up there as well. And so until Saturday, I'm going to let you guys go. Thanks, everybody, who joined me tonight in the chat. And thank you if you made it this far in the video. I will see you again on Saturday. Until then, don't let the door hit your ass on the way out. Otherwise, Niles Calder may shoot your ass into space looking for a space anomaly and, you know, just fuck you over because that's who he is. Thanks, everybody. I will see you again on Saturday. Have a good night and a good tomorrow, and stay safe out there. Wash your hands, wear a mask. I will talk to you later. Bye.